Naila, why is English language important to learn?
This is because English language is an international language and is widely followed and understood by people across the world.
I want to learn this language.
To learn every language, there are some skills to develop. Follow this class to learn these skills.
Viewers of MTA Africa, we welcome you once again to our program, English Language. This program is a simplified guide to us in understanding things in English. We have so far been discussing relationship between clauses. We have looked at coordination and subordination to an extent. Today's lesson is going to be a continuation of what we discussed the last time under subordination. I welcome you once again. Get ready with your pen and exercise book to be with us throughout the program. We are going to look into details under subordination, and today's topic under relationship between clauses is subordinator 1. Now let's look at the objectives for today's lesson. It is our hope that by the end of the lesson, you should be able to 1. State the various categories of subordinator. As we did look at the categories of coordination or coordinators, subordinators also do have categories. We can put subordinator into different groups. So it is our aim that by the end of this lesson, we'll be able to identify the various groups that subordinator can be grouped. We also hope that by the end of the lesson, you should be able to use 2 of the categories in our Objective 1 correctly. Now let's get into the lesson. As indicated in our discussion under subordination, subordinator, that the subordinating conjunction, is used to show dependency. Now we saw that anytime we have a subordinator, then it means that we have 2 clauses that have been connected at a level where one clause depends on the other for a perfect meaning. So you have a situation of one clause being of a higher rank than the other. This is what we discovered in our last discussion under subordination. When a clause depends on another for a perfect meaningful message, a subordinator is used to link such statement. So what we are saying is that anytime you have a clause, and that particular clause will have to depend on another clause before the meaning comes out clearly to all of us, then we need what is known as subordinator, as we have in the sentence below. In sentence 1 we have, we missed the train though we left home early for the station. So here we have we missed the train. And then we have though we left home early for the station. Though you left early for the station doesn't give us a complete sense, a complete message. So we have that clause depending on the first part of the statement to give us a complete meaning. So the subordinator though is used to connect these 2 clauses together. Then sentence 2, politicians are unexpectedly humble in order that electorate vote them during elections. So here we have 2 clauses again. One clause depending on the other for a complete meaning. Politicians are unexpectedly humble is the main clause here, and therefore gives us a complete meaning. In order that electorate vote them during elections, doesn't give us a complete meaning. So we have a subordinator in order that connecting these 2 clauses together for a perfect unit message. We saw things like this in our last discussion. They will need my help as far as I'm concerned. So we have they will need my help, giving us a complete message. And that is a main clause, a clause that can stand on its own without any further information before we are able to get the message. As far as I'm concerned, cannot stand on its own to give us a complete message. So it depends on the first clause. They will need my help for that message to be realized completely. So we have the subordinator as far as connecting these two clauses together. So we have in these three sentences a situation where one clause, that's the second clause we have in each sentence, depending on the other to make sense. So a situation like this brings to fore what is known as dependency between clauses. So we have a situation where one clause depends on the other. Certainly a subordinator is required to give us that complete message. So we have though in sentence 1, in order that in sentence 2, and as far as in sentence 3 as subordinators, connecting the two clauses in each sentence for a perfect meaningful message. As seen from the above sentences, subordinator is used to introduce dependent clauses. As we saw, subordinators were used to introduce the dependent clauses we have in all the three sentences. Subordinating conjunctions can be put into 3 or 4 groups. So when we have a subordinator, what we are saying is that we can put them into groups. We saw previously in our discussion under coordination that we could put coordinators into groups as a group of contrast, group of addition, group of choice or option to make. Then we also have another group that enable us in our coordination to do what is known as result. That's the end result of something. In the same manner, subordinators can be put into 3 or 4 groups, depending on the writer that you are actually trying to research under. So we have the following groups that we can discuss. We have simple subordinators. Then we have complex subordinators. Then we have what other writers term as correlative subordinators. Now, these 3 are the main categories of subordinators that we do have. So we have subordinators that we can group under simple subordinators. Then we have another category that we can group under complex subordinators. And we have another that have also been grouped under correlative subordinators. The names of these is not what is important, but how to use each group appropriately. Let's remember, depending on the level at which you are learning this, naming the subordinators are not most important to us, especially if you are within the basic school level, let's say at the JHS. Knowing the names is not what is most important, but actually understanding what each subordinator does and the level at which we can use each one is what is most important. And especially using them appropriately anytime we are either speaking or writing. So we are going to discuss each one of them, see what each is made of, and how we can appropriately use each class of subordinator. So let's look at the simple subordinator. Simple subordinators are made of single words. That's most important. So when we have a subordinator that is made of just single words, this is a situation where you have a subordinator in your sentence that is made of a simple one word, just one word. Then we say such a subordinator is a simple subordinator. Such subordinators include, so the subordinators we have that are made of single words include after, although, as, because, before, if. Immediately, list, like, once, since, that. Though, although, till, unless, until. When, whenever, wherever, whereas. So these are all simple subordinators. And we say they are simple subordinators because each one of them is just a single word. We still have whereupon and then while. We've used some of these in our sentences so far under subordinators or under subordination that we've discussed. But let's see further how we can use them in our sentences. Some of these appear as adverbials in certain contexts. Let's take note. What we have there are simple subordinators. In certain contexts, depending on what you are discussing, they can also appear as adverbials, as adverbs. But our discussion here is not using them as adverbials, but the discussion is presenting them as conjunctions. So let's take note, and let's not at all be confused. When they are used as adverbials, they function as adverbs, and their relation is completely different in the sentence as when we use them as conjunctions. So here, we are using these simple subordinators as conjunctions. Now let's look at, in sentences, how after, although, as, because, before, if are used as conjunctions. In sentence 1, we have, the spectators cheered up the team as they score more goals. So here we have, as they score more goals, to be our dependent clause. Then we have the spectators cheered up the team to be our main clause. So here we have as linking the two clauses together. As here is used as a conjunction, a subordinator, a subordinating conjunction. So the spectators cheered up the team as they score more goals. Here it's giving us a message that as more goals are being scored, the spectators keep cheering the team up. So see, let's see if the subordinate clause, that's a dependent clause, could come before the main clause. Can we say they score more goals as the spectator cheered up the team? Try to analyze it. They score more goals as the spectator cheered up the team. Immediately you turn it that way, the meaning will be quite different from what we have there. So here, the spectators cheered up the team as they score more goals is telling us that the cheering came as a result of the goals they score. So here, the goals they score come and the spectators cheer them up. So here what we are saying is that the spectators cheer the team as more of the goals are being scored. Then we have sentence 2. The research work was finalized after The research work was finalized after Mr. Robert looked at it. So we have here, after Mr. Robert looked at it. After Mr. Robert looked at it doesn't make a complete sense. The research work was finalized. It makes sense. So we have these two clauses linked together by a subordinator after. And then it's telling us that Mr. Robert more or less authenticated the finality of the research work. So it means even though the research work could have been written and everything could have been done on it, but it is still not considered something that is finalized until Mr. Robert has looked at it. Then in sentence 3, here we've used after, we've used as. Then we have people fail to follow the protocols in place, although it is for their safety. So we have a situation where concession is used, a situation where you expect a certain outcome, but the outcome is not happening the way that is expected. So we have although it is for their safety, being a subordinate clause, being a clause that depends on the clause, people fail to follow the protocols in place before the meaning comes out clear. Here, we expected that if something is for the safety of a particular group of people, they try to follow the protocols put in place. But in this situation, we do not have that happening. We have a situation where the conjunction that is used is giving us an outcome that is not expected. So we have people fail to follow the protocols in place, although it is for their safety. So in this case, let's take note, please, that our coordinators let's take note that our subordinators come in between our two clauses. That is very, very important. In situations where they are used as adverbials, you do not see them coming in this manner. For example, we have after coming just before the subject of the clause, Mr. Robert. Then we have although coming just before the subject of the clause, it. Just a clue in guiding us as to how we can use these simple subordinators as subordinators and also using them separately under our study if we get there, adverbials. And then we have sentence 4. We should finish on time if all goes well. So here we have a situation of a condition. So our conjunction, the subordinating conjunction there, if, is used as condition. If all goes well, we should finish on time. You can play it that way, and it's still the same message that you will get from when we should finish on time. We should finish on time if all goes well. So a condition is being placed here by our subordinator if, because if all goes well, depends on we should finish on time before the full message is given. Now we have in sentence 5, the company had financial challenges because its expenditure was higher than revenue generated. The company had financial challenges because its expenditure was higher than revenue generated. So here too, we have used because. And it's giving us a situation where something happens as a result of another issue. If the company had managed their revenue generation very well, they wouldn't face financial challenges. That is what is the message in that sentence is giving us. So we have because there. And we realize in each of the subordinators we have, as I had indicated, just before the next clause, we will see that we have our subject for the subordinate clause coming immediately after our subordinator. I've already indicated that of sentence 1 to 3 to be they in sentence 1, immediately after us the subordinator, they being the subject. Mr. Robert coming immediately after being the subject, Mr. Robert, for that clause. Then we have although coming just before it being the subject. Then we have if coming just before all as a subject. Then we have because coming just before is expenditure. A clue, a guide in helping us to be able to use subordinators perfectly. Subordinators that do appear as adverbials. Now let's look at how when, whenever, wherever, while, whereas are used in sentences. So we have this when, whenever, wherever, while, whereas, as in the following sentences. So we have in sentence 1, the minister contracted the virus while engaged in public discourses. Discussing means public discussions. So the minister contracted the virus while engaged in public discourses. So here we have while, giving us an idea of time. So the subordinator there is giving us an idea of time in relationship to the clauses. So the connector or the connecting conjunction we have there is while. And again, you will realize that just after while, we should have a subject there. And a known subject, that's the minister, which should be he. So we have the minister contracted the virus while he engaged in public discourses. But of course, he could be taken off. But there's an implied subject there, just after while, he. Remember, we've always maintained throughout this our discussion a simple way of identifying a clause, that a clause should always have a subject-verb relationship. So here, in that sentence, we have he, the implied he, which refers to the minister as a subject, and then engaged being the verb. In sentence 2, we are using whereas. The judge sentenced him to 10 years imprisonment. The judge sentenced him to 10 years imprisonment, whereas his crime requires 5 years. So here we have a situation of where the outcome of an action is not the way we all expected. If it happens that a crime requires 5 years, then the judge will sentence the person for 5 years. But in this case, the action of the judge is contrary to what is being known. So we have a situation of concession happening there. So we will have, whereas his crime requires for 5 years, being a dependent clause, a subordinate clause to the judge sentenced him to 10 years imprisonment. So we have whereas here. And again, as mentioned, you see that just after whereas, we have the subject for that clause, which is his crime. Remember, his there is a determiner, his crime. Crime is actually the subject, his crime. In sentence 3, we are using whenever. So the president shuffles his ministers whenever he deems fit. So at any particular point in time that the president thinks it is okay, it is all right to reshuffle his ministers, the president does that. So we have he deems fit, and the president reshuffles his ministers, being connected together by the subordinate wherever. So the statement wherever he deems fit depends on the president reshuffling his ministers. And again, it is used as a subordinator, a conjunction, subordinating conjunction here, in a sense that when we observe, as I've tried to maintain, just after whenever, we have the subject of the clause coming, he. They will be arrested wherever they are found. So at any place at all they are found, they will be arrested. So they will be arrested wherever they are found. So wherever they are found depends on they will be arrested before the meaning comes out clear. So here we have the use of wherever, giving us an idea of the relationship of time between the clauses. And then we have complex subordinators. So these subordinators are made of two words, as in, even if, as though, even when, soon after, no sooner than, as if. So when we talk of complex subordinators, we are saying that these are subordinators made of two words. Made of two words. Now let's see how these are used in context. So let's see even if, as though, even when, soon after, no sooner than, as if, how they are used in sentences. Get me the document, even if you have to finish late into the night. Irrespective of whatever happens, just get me the document. So under no condition should you fail to get me the document. So get me the document even if you have to finish late into the night. Even if you have to finish late into the night, depends on get me the document before the meaning comes out clear. So irrespective of the time, ensure that you get me the document. She complains every day as though someone is responsible for what happened. So here, it is not expected that the person should be complaining because the actions for which the person is complaining is well known, and therefore the person shouldn't be complaining. However, we have a situation where complaints goes on. So we have as though, complex subordinator there. Joining the statement as though someone is responsible for what happened. 2, she complains every day. And again, someone as subject there, just after as though. No sooner had he left than his subordinate started leaving post. Take note, when we are using no sooner, we split the statement before then. So no sooner, then we have one part of the clause coming there. Then after one part of that clause comes, then follows. Just as in the case of either or, and then neither nor. So had he left there, and then his subordinate started leaving post also there. So we have no sooner coming before the first part of the clause, and then also coming before the next part of the clause. He eats as if his life depends on food. He eats as if his life depends on food. A subordinator there joining them. Research works are carried out even when they will never be used. Quite an interesting situation where we don't expect that something would be put to use. We don't expect that it should be done. In this situation, we have something that will never be put to use, and yet it is still being carried out. So we have even when joining the two clauses. So even when they will never be used, depends on research works are carried out to give us a complete meaning. So our discussion today has majorly been on simple subordinators and complex subordinators. We, however, also looked at a third one, correlative subordinators. We mentioned it, we haven't discussed that into details. So in summary, this is what we've discussed for the day. We discussed simple subordinator. And we say this is a subordinator that is made of just one word. As we saw in when, while, as, if, because, after. Then we also looked at complex subordinators. And in that we said these are subordinators that are made of two words. In the case of even when, as though, even though, and others. This is where time will permit us to be with you, hoping to meet you again on the same channel next week. Make time to be with us and never miss it. Until we meet you again, we say bye-bye and enjoy the rest of your week.